Singular value decomposition has so many applications, especially in computer science. One of these applications is the image processing that we'll be talking about this right now. So before we, we proceed further, let's first discuss what the image is. So any image or any digital image is represented by a matrix. Each cell of this matrix represents a value on the white-black scale. For instance, the black pixel takes the value of 0, and the white pixel takes a value of 2055. So any value between them is actually a gray scale, meaning that whenever you're approaching the 0, that means you're going from white to black, maybe gray or whatever. And when you're approaching 255, you're becoming white. The cell is becoming white. And of course, the matrix needs to be represented by M and N, and M and N is the number of rows and the number of columns of this image. And of course, when you increase the number of columns and rows, that of course the image resolution. For example, I have an image here, and I'm trying to show you here. This image is represented digitally in matrix form. So first of all, the resolution of this image is 144 times 197, like I said. And I opened this image in MATLAB, and this red box on the image is showing a small portion of this image and actually a small portion of the matrix. And where you can see the values are very low, of course, because inside the box almost all the colors are black. You see this part is almost black in here. All of this part is black, and this corresponds to very low values, except for the corner in here, up in here. And you can see here this is becoming higher values, other than very low values approaching 0. Just a reminder, a 0 value represents what? Represents a black image, and or a black pixel, and the value if the value is approaching a higher level or a higher value to reach 255, this is a white pixel. Okay, with this image, if I wanted to save it on my computer, how would this be done? The computer reserves a memory for each cell value in the matrix. For this small image with the very low resolution, the image is taking almost 9 kilobytes of the computer's memory. Imagine how large we need in terms of memory for higher quality images with higher number of columns and rows for this matrix. This could reach gigabytes, of course. Just a small recap on what VG was saying before. A is actually our image here, and we are trying to do the singular value decomposition. So you will have a U matrix, a sigma matrix, and V transpose matrix. Because the resolution of our image is 144 times 197, that we can actually predict the dimensions of these matrices. For the U matrix, you can reach 144 matrix, and I will jump to this later. And for the singular values matrix, you will have 144 and times 197. So you have 197 columns, and you only have 144 rows. So in this format, because the number of rows is very smaller than the number of columns, we don't have any zeros in here. This only happens if the number of rows is larger than the number of columns, of course. And actually, this is vice versa. So if it's these values are reversed. So if the image was 197 times 144, you will have zeros in here and nothing in here. Okay. So jumping to the V value, the V transpose value, of course, you will have the number of columns here. So these will be corresponding to 197 rows. So let's actually visit MATLAB and understand how to do this in MATLAB and to calculate the singular values decomposition in MATLAB. So we use, after loading the image in MATLAB, we use this simple code in here that says SVD as a short for singular value decomposition, and I converted the values inside the image. The image is I called grayscale or gray data because the image is only black and white, so it's grayscale data. I converted it to double so that the singular value decomposition function can work on it. And this function returns three matrices, the U, S, and V. So after this, I created a small array that takes only the values of the diagonal. So you remember the diagonal matrix or the singular value matrix or the sigma matrix had only one row here, like one diagonal in here with values, and all of these are zeros. All values around this diagonal was zeros. So this function here was only taking the values in the diagonal. So I'm doing this for a reason. Actually, I'm actually plotting each value from the index. So the index 1 means the value up in here, and the index 2 the value in here, the index 3 the value in here, and index number 144 is the last value in the diagonal. So you can see here the first index or the first number in the sigma matrix has the highest value. It's like this value. It's very large. However, for the smaller values or this very small value or the index of 144 times 1 or the index of 144, the value is very low. So by this, I'm just trying to show you or prove the fact that the first singular value is larger than the second and larger than the third and so on and so forth until the end. The lowest value is the last value. So this means what? This means the first singular value is actually has more data or stores more data in it more than the second value, and the second value has more data than the third value. And this tells us a lot. We can save a lot of data or storage in the computer memory. So what do we have in here? This is a matrix. I'm just zooming out to see everything. So this is the matrix in here, and you can see it's 144 rows times 197 columns. And because this is a sigma matrix, that means the diagonals only has values, which is represented by this blue line in here. Only these values or these values across the diagonal has values. Other than this are zeros. So big zeros in here. Okay, so I'm just showing in here the first part of this matrix because it's important. So here it is. That's the matrix. So you can see here the first value of this diagonal matrix is what? Is 50. And the second part or the second value is what? Is lower than it. And the third is far lower than it. And whenever you are going down, you see what? You notice that the values are decreasing towards 0. Okay? So on contrast, you have here what? You have the same matrix, the same sigma matrix, but I'm showing here the last box or the last couple lines of this matrix in here. So you can see here the values are really 0. It's almost nothing. It's 4 times 10 to the power negative 15. So these values are not really contributing to the image data. So back to our formula again. We said image is represented by 3 matrices. The first one is the U, the sigma, and V transpose. Because we said after some values we have only zeros in the sigma matrix, we can just remove these zero matrix and we have the compact representation of the image. So we can actually represent this by a linear combination of the multiplication of all of these matrices together, which is the first column of the U matrix times the value, the first singular value times the first row transpose of the V transpose matrix, and so on and so forth. So you continue to until you reach the R. So R here is what? R here is the lowest dimension of the matrix, which is 144. So we will use the fact that the sigma 1 is greater than or equal sigma 2, greater than sigma 3, and so on and so forth, till the sigma R. So we can use this actually to lower the dimension of the image. So what I mean by this is, what if we took only those two factors or two linear combinations and ignore the rest? So I will ignore all of these. What does this mean? It actually means I'm losing some part of the data, right? Because I am not multiplying all of these times all of these and times all of these. So I'm only multiplying, I'm taking only two of the data, two factors of the data, or two terms of the data, and I'll be losing data, right? I'll be losing a big portion of the data. But this does what? This saves a lot of memory in the computer, right? So if I need my image to be high resolution, I will keep more of the sigmas here. I will keep higher number of sigmas. But if I need less resolution, I will keep only 3 or 2 or 4 or whatever, a smaller number, I mean. So by this, we can save a lot in the memory. Actually, Facebook, Instagram, all of these are doing this to their images. So if you're using WhatsApp, for instance, whenever you are sending an image to a friend of yours, you notice that the image that you're sending on WhatsApp has a lower resolution. Actually, WhatsApp is doing this type of compression. So this compression is doing what? It's just removing some part of the data that's actually neglectable in the computer and neglectable to the human being, of course. So we are compromising this big size of the data because they are not contributing so much in the data actually and the image. So like I said, I did this in here. I removed I left only the first 20 singular values in the sigma matrix. So this is the sigma matrix, like I said, and I only left those in here with the values. And after this, all the values after the 20 value, so this is the number 20 in here, and all the values after this are 0 out. So this gives me what? This gives me this image. You can see here, it's the same. It's almost the same. You can tell the difference. So in here, I'm just showing you it's the 20 by 20. The matrix is 20 by 20. This is the same, and all of after this is actually 0 out in here. So all of these on the diagonal are zeros, and everyone else is 0. So here is what? Here is the rank. You remember the rank? The rank. It's the number of singular values in the sigma matrix. So here I just kept all the values of the singular values. Here I took the first 120. So to just remind you, here is the sigma matrix, and here's the diagonal values. For this one, I only took 120. So I took up to this value, which is correspond to 120 in here. So this is 120, and I took all these values on here. I just kept them as is, and after this, I removed them. So I made them zeros. So this is for 120. You can see it's almost the same. 160, it's almost the same. 35, so you can see I took only 35, all of these values, and I removed the rest, so the rest are zeros. For 35, 30, 24, 18, 15, and so on and so forth until you reach 1 and 2. So 1 and 2, 5, 10. That means what? That means the first 10 are really contributing so much to the data. So this is the number 10. So this small portion of the matrix of the sigma value are contributing to the data more than the rest of these, values in the diagonal. So here is the error in compression. So the thing that we did actually is called compression. So the error is what? The error is the norm of the matrix, of the new matrix, of course, divided by the norm of the old matrix. This gives us this error in compression. So you can see here, if I took a small value of singular values, the error is very high. It's relatively high, of course. But when if it's approaching almost the full rank of the data or of the matrix, the error is flattening and the error is reaching 0. So I'm just here showing you the distribution or the histogram of the full rank image. That means I took the 144 singular values, and you can see here this is the distribution of the values of each pixel. For instance, because we have too many values for black pixels, we have a small bump in here, and it's flattening out when it's reaching the white cells. Similarly, for when I took the rank 2, it's almost the same, except for you will see when it's approaching the white cells, it's giving nothing. It's almost nothing. And the reason for 0 to 100 is because I made the matrix grayscale, and the grayscale is representing the same matrix, but instead of from 0 to 150, it's represented from 0 to 1 only. So it's the same actually. So 0.8 is representing the 200 of RGB. Okay, so I'm doing here the opposite. So if this is the singular matrix and this is the diagonal, I'm doing the opposite. I'm taking from backward, from here, from this point further. So for the first one, I'm taking 144 of the singular values. That means I'm taking the full rank of this. I'm taking all the values in the diagonal. I'm not zeroing out any value in the diagonal. But for the 143, that means what? That means I just remove the first value in here. I remove this value only. After this is the product. So the image is not clear anymore because the first value is contributing so much to the data. So after this, I remove another singular value, another important value, another important singular value from the beginning, from here. And this is the result. I kept doing this until you reach 130 here, and you see what? 130 is this one. So I'm taking all the values in here, I'm just leaving them as is, and I only zeroing out all of these. I made the values in here in 0. So the value, the pixel here, sorry, the image here, you'll see what? That image here is zeros or blacks or black image. That means no transfer of the data. So it's not clear anymore. After 130, you see the image is becoming 0. So all of these are zeros because, however, I'm taking all of these data. I didn't change any of them. I didn't change any of these data. I'm just changing the small pixel, the small number of singular values in here. It's a small number actually. Just a small, manipulated like 5 or 6 singular values. I made them 0 instead of their actual values. And look, this is the result. It's completely wrong, completely destroyed. So again, if I plotted the error in the compression or for this reversion model that we talked about in here, like this is again the segment matrix we talked about. So in here, if I took only nothing, the first entry in this diagonal, so it's this only value, the error is the maximum. And then if I added another value, it's still the maximum until you reach what? You reach a very contributing value in here, this value in here, and it turns out to be very, very close to the high values. As I remember, it was 20 or something. So these values are really contributing so much to the data of the image.